is Claire Breukel. I work as the curator for the Unscripted Valhalla Art Program. I also work as the chief curator for the Museum of Art in El Salvador, specifically for their contemporary art program. I also do a lot of writing. I have written for Icon, which is a magazine specifically focused on photography. I've also written for Art Aldea. I've done some blogging for Hyperallergic, which is a fantastic site based out of New York. And generally I've written a few artist essays for books. One of my favorite, actually one of my highlights, was doing the foreword for an artist called Mel Ramos, who is a pop artist based out of San Francisco. It was a little bit out of my field, and it was a really exciting piece of writing for me to do. So I grew up in Cape Town in South Africa. It was an incredibly interesting way to grow up because it had the kind of oxymoron of being one of the most beautiful places in the whole world, but also having gone to a whites-only school for my former years at school. So the political climate in South Africa was a very complicated place to grow up. But I was very fortunate to be able to go to university in South Africa, and I completed my Bachelor of Arts in Fine Art at the University of Cape Town. Following this, I started to volunteer at the South African Centre for Photography, and they hosted an annual event called the Cape Town Month of Photography. And they invited a curator from around the world to come and to basically curate this giant event that sprawled throughout Cape Town. And in its, if I recall, its second year, the curator wasn't able to come down. And so the person who headed up, Jeff Hundlin, came to me and a fellow student of mine and invited us to curate the Cape Town Month of Photography for the first time. I was 21 years of age. I'd never curated anything in my life. And we arranged 156 exhibitions throughout Cape Town. And my colleague Kim Stern and myself basically came out of that after 6 months, absolutely exhausted, and got what could not have been a more invaluable crash course on how to curate shows. Looking back, we would have probably done a lot of stuff in a more experienced way, but the in-depth experience was incredible. From then, I went to go and work at the Association for Visual Arts, which was a non-for-profit art space in Cape Town. Estelle Jacobs was the director, and I worked with her there, and that is where I met Mark Coetzee, who was the director of the Breukel family collection, and whose exhibition of his own work I actually worked on at this space. He hates me saying that because he doesn't like me to say that he made his own work, but that's how I met him. I then went on to curate the Breukel Art Awards, which was a big art award throughout South Africa that basically commissioned 50 artworks for a giant show. It was one of the biggest awards ever produced in South Africa. During that time, in the middle of that, Mark Coetzee had invited me to come to Miami to do the Breukel collection internship. And so that was my first introduction to Miami, was through the internship, where I actually came to Miami for 3 months. I then returned to Cape Town for another year to work on the awards, and got a phone call from Richard Shack, who was the then chairperson of the Art Centre on Lincoln Road. And he invited me to come and be the director of exhibitions. So I came back to Miami for that. But when I was very, very young, my first impression of art was, we used to live next door to a man called Jan Vermeeren, who used to paint these extraordinary dreamscapes. And I must have been like 6 or 7 years old, and I was friends with his two kids. And so I used to hop the fence to go over and spend time there because I loved their pool, and I also wanted to just sit inside the studio space and watch him paint. And I think that was my first impression of art. And I was really young, and I used to just remember spending hours watching him paint and being absolutely enthralled by him.